My sister-in-law had to undress me and bathe me, too. She thought I was still clueless, just a fool, but when she started on my pants, I stopped her hand. Clara. I startled Clara. She completely froze. I looked her in the eye and said, I'm awake now. I'm not a fool anymore. On my third day with her, I finally accepted that I'd been transported here. I'm Ethan Brooks. In my past life, I was a Special Forces instructor. Then I woke up as Red Star Village's fool. I'd relied on my brother and Clara for 2 years. 5 days ago, my brother fell in the mountains. He lost his footing and died far too young. Now, in this rundown home, it was just Clara and me. I calmly asked her, Clara, how much food do we have left? Clara burst into tears. She turned away, her voice choked with sobs. We're out of food, and we still owe the village for our rations. My heart sank. It felt like an icicle had stabbed through me. In times like these, no money meant no options. I threw back the thin, tattered quilt, and got out of bed. The moment my feet hit the floor, cold shot from my soles to the top of my head. I shuddered, but my resolve only hardened. I grabbed the old hunting rifle from the corner and hefted it. Track. Lie in wait. 1 shot, 1 kill. All those days surviving in the jungle felt as vivid as yesterday. Ethan, where are you going? Clara panicked and grabbed my arm. Worry filled her eyes. It's freezing out. The mountains are too dangerous. I'm going into the mountains. I met her gaze, steady and unwavering. I'll hunt and earn some money. I'll pay for my brother's funeral, repay our debt, and keep this family afloat. Clara started crying again. This time, they were tears of joy. She saw the haze was gone from my eyes and saw me standing tall. She was too choked up to speak. She just nodded firmly. I'd barely reached the door when someone started yelling beyond the yard gate. The voice was shrill and vicious. Even through the door, the bullying was unmistakable. Clara, Ethan, give back that half sack of sweet potatoes, or I'll report you to the village office, and leave you both to starve. It's our neighbor, Mrs. Gable. Ethan used to be a fool, and she took full advantage of him, stealing veggies one day, sweet potatoes the next. Ethan would just chuckle like an idiot. Clara was too soft-spoken to say anything. Now that we're broke, she's eager to collect debts, afraid we'll default. I opened the yard gate and blocked the doorway. Freezing wind blew and snow. I narrowed my eyes at her. When Mrs. Gable saw me, she froze for a moment. She'd never seen Ethan the fool look so cold. There was no foolishness in my eyes, only icy sharpness. It gave her the creeps. Yet, relying on her seniority, she put her hands on her hips. Spittle flying, she barked, Ethan, you fool. Why block the door? Call Clara out. I'm not talking to you. I said nothing, just staring with the killer aura forged in my past life as a drill instructor. It was a ruthless aura born from war, the gaze of a battle-tested killer, heavy enough to choke her. Mrs. Gable's voice trailed off. Her lips trembling, she backed away 2 steps. Her foot slipped, nearly falling on her rear. Feigning bravery, she squeaked, W, what are you doing? I'm just asking. There's a better way to ask. The Brooks family owes you nothing. My stern warning scared Mrs. Gable off in panic. Once Mrs. Gable had fled, I hurried outside. I turned and saw Clara watching at the door, her eyes shining with hope. I promised her, wait for me at home, Clara. I'll bring back game tonight. Ethan Brooks, never bowed to fate, and Clara's life is mine to protect as well. Well, isn't this the Brooks family fool, making trouble in this cold weather? As I reached the tree at the village entrance, I ran right into Sam Miller. He was a shady rat. Relying on his uncle, Chief Frank Miller, he stole, harassed women, and constantly bullied Ethan. He'd slap and kick him at will. Now, he walked over as usual and spat right at my feet. So you've got your wits back and you're going hunting? Head west. There's plenty of game there. You'll easily bag roe deer and rabbits. I scoffed inwardly. The mountains out west, I knew from the original host's memories, had a den with a vicious sow and piglets. Forget hunting, you'd steer clear even passing through. This punk wanted to lure me in and let the boar gore me to death, so he could take my sister-in-law, Clara, for himself. That was downright vicious. I couldn't be bothered with this scum. Yeah, got it. I followed his directions west and entered the western mountains. Then I doubled back east. I wasn't afraid of wild boars, but Clara was home alone. I figured I should take the safer east side so I could get back sooner. Once in the woods, I followed a trail of shallow hoofprints. The prints were small and delicate. They were from a valuable red fox. A red fox pelt was real hard currency back then. A whole red fox pelt could fetch good money. I slowed my steps and quieted my breathing. I crouched low, and before long, I spotted a plump red fox. Its coat was sleek and glossy, and a brilliant fiery red. It stood out against the white snow. It was gnawing on a pheasant, glancing around warily now and then. It had no idea danger was closing in. I held my breath, slowly raised my shotgun, and aimed at its head. It wasn't far, just 55 yards away. A shot rang out. Shotgun pellets tore through the air. The fox dropped on the spot. It twitched twice, then went still. Just like in my past life, this Special Forces instructor never missed. I ran over to check. It weighed a full 22 pounds. The pelt was completely undamaged. I'd struck it rich. I was ecstatic. I set a few more traps nearby, using rope and branches to make snares for rabbits and pheasants. Before long, I caught 3 fat rabbits and 2 pheasants. I slung the red fox over my shoulder. I hung the rabbits and pheasants at my waist and headed home, humming a tune. Just as I reached my front gate, I heard my sister-in-law scream inside. Her voice was full of terror and despair. It sent chills down my spine. "Let go of me, Sam, you scoundrel. You'll die a horrible death." My heart lurched. Rage surged straight to my head, setting my whole body on fire. I threw the red fox off my shoulder and kicked the courtyard gate open. The sight before me made my blood boil. Rage consumed me. Sam had Clara cornered, one hand pinning her shoulder, the other tearing at her clothes. He'd ripped open her rough-spun shirt, exposing the thin undergarment beneath. Clara's face was white with fear. She fought with all her strength, but she was no match for Sam. Tears streamed down her face. "Sam!" I roared, my voice booming across the yard. Sam froze for a second, then recovered with a chuckle. "Fool, why are you back so early?" When he saw me charge at him, Sam quit mouthing off. The heavy-jowled old man barked. "There's no reasoning with a fool. I'll teach you a lesson too." Just like always, Sam swung his fist and came at me. But unlike before, my massive, iron-hard fists weren't for show. Before Sam could react, my punch sent him flying 6 feet. He tried to yell, but I kicked him in the gut first. I put all my strength into that kick. Sam was clearly in agony. He could barely get a word out. But the hatred and greed in his eyes said, "The second I get the chance, I'll make another move on your sister-in-law." So I taught him a lesson he'd never forget. I turned and hoisted the red fox up, then slammed it full force into his lower back. Sam let out a blood-curdling scream and collapsed, foaming at the mouth. He curled up into a ball. His leg bones might have even snapped. He writhed in agony. The commotion drew a crowd of villagers. They peeked over the courtyard wall, staring at Sam on the ground, then at the fury radiating off me. They were too terrified to even breathe. Their curiosity turned to terror. I swept the crowd with an icy glare. My gaze cut across their faces like a blade. I barked, "What are you staring at?" Scram! The villagers looked relieved and scattered instantly, running faster than rabbits. They didn't even dare peek over the wall. I quickly helped the trembling Clara up. She went completely limp, her face deathly pale. Even her lips were trembling. I patted her back and gently reassured her, "It's okay. I'm back now. With me here, no one will hurt you." Clara threw herself into my arms and sobbed uncontrollably. She cried out all her anguish and fear. I held her tight and silently vowed, "No one will ever hurt one of mine again. I'll cripple anyone who tries." Sam's agonized screams eventually drew village chief Frank Miller over. He brought several village officials storming into the yard. Each wore a respectable padded coat and an arrogant look. Frank was short and pudgy, with a big belly and slicked back hair. When he saw Sam groaning on the ground, his face instantly darkened, like a storm cloud rolling in. He glanced over at Clara, his eyes flashing with lust. His leering gaze clung to her. It made my skin crawl. Then he pointed at me and barked, "Ethan, you've got some nerve. How dare you attack someone here? Have you no respect for the village office or the law?" When Sam saw Frank, it was like his savior had arrived. He struggled to lift his head. He wailed, "Uncle Frank, you have to stand up for me." I came to comfort Clara and help her through her grief. But I caught her fooling around with Ethan, alone together in the house. It was disgraceful. I only said a few words, and he beat me senseless. Look what he did to me. I'm in agony. At that, the villagers erupted, their gossip buzzing like a swarm of flies. No wonder. Ethan only just got his wits back, and he's already defending Clara. Something fishy is going on. Exactly. A man and woman alone together? What will people say? They've disgraced all of Red Star Village. Chief Miller needs to deal with them, or they'll corrupt the whole village. As Frank listened to the villagers, a sinister smile curled on his lips. He seemed to have expected this. He cleared his throat and put on an official air. But really, he was settling a grudge. "Ethan, Clara, you've corrupted our village with your shameless behavior. I'll have you dragged to the township administration for public denunciation. The whole village will see what happens to those who break the rules." I silently cursed that shameless old bastard, but I gave nothing away. My gaze was ice cold. I pointed to the fox, rabbit, and pheasant by the door. I gave a cold laugh, then boomed, drowning out all the chatter. "Chief Miller, look closely. I just hunted these in the mountains. The blood isn't even dry. If I'd been home fooling around with my sister-in-law, when would I have had time to hunt? What? Can I be in 2 places at once? Everyone turned toward the game by the door. The fox's fur was still wet with blood. The rabbit's body was still stiffening. The blood was plain to see. The murmurs died down. People began whispering, thinking I had a point. Frank's face darkened. He looked like he'd been slapped. But he wouldn't give up. He argued stubbornly. Who's to say you didn't bag them earlier? Maybe you got them yesterday and brought them out today to show off. When I headed into the mountains, Sam spoke to me at the village entrance. He told me to head west. I stared at Frank, my gaze sharp. My voice was low, but every word was clear. Every word struck hard. There's a wild boar den out west. He wanted me killed so he could prey on my sister-in-law. I didn't fall for it. I headed east, bagged some game, and came back. Then he showed up at my house and put his hands all over my sister-in-law. At those words, the villagers' looks at Sam changed instantly. Their sympathy turned to contempt. Everyone knew about the boar den out west. Sam was clearly trying to get me killed. Just then, an old shepherd stepped from the crowd. He wore a tattered padded coat and carried a shepherd's whip. He coughed twice, his voice old but strong. I can vouch for him. I was grazing sheep in the eastern hills today. I saw Ethan hunting there. He chased a red fox for over half a mile. I saw it clear as day. The old shepherd was a good, honest man. He'd never told a lie in his life. His word carried weight. Once he spoke up, Frank's accusations fell apart, and the villagers changed their tune. They started calling Sam a bastard. He tried to hurt me and got beaten. Served him right. I seized the moment, put an arm around Clara's shoulders, and declared, loud enough for the whole yard to hear, Clara and I have been seeing each other. My brother's gone, so it's only right I care for her. Soon, I'll register our marriage with the township administration. Our relationship is above board. We're not afraid of gossip. Clara flinched and looked up at me, her eyes full of shock and embarrassment. I gave her a wink. She caught on right away, blushed, and lowered her head, silently confirming my story. Now Frank was completely out of moves. His face went red, then white, like a paint palette. It was hideous. His eyes darted as he hatched another dirty trick to make trouble for me. He cleared his throat and said pompously, fine, we'll let this go. But we just got word from the township. 2 young women are being sent here. They'll board at your house. It's sitting empty anyway. You can make room for them. And as for the communal grain debt, you have 3 days to pay it all, or you'll answer to me. My heart sank. This old bastard was dumping them on me just to weigh me down. 2 more mouths to feed. Pay the whole debt in 3 days? He was asking the impossible. I glared at Frank and ground out every word. Fine, I'll do it. Frank let out a cold snort and had Sam carried away. As he left, he shot me a glare. His vicious stare cut like a poisoned blade. The villagers slowly dispersed. Before leaving, they gossiped about Clara and me. Clara grabbed my arm and asked anxiously. Her voice was thick with worry. Ethan, what are we going to do? How can we get that much money in 3 days? And there are those 2 city girls. We can barely feed ourselves. How are we supposed to feed them? I met her gaze, steady and sure, and patted her hand. Don't worry, I assured her. We'll find a way. It's just 2 city girls and a debt. I can handle it. I already had a plan. The eastern mountains had to hold more valuables. After beating Sam down and dealing with that old bastard Frank, I could finally catch my breath, but my burden hadn't gotten any lighter. Now I had Sophia and Lily to feed, plus the debt we owed the collective. The odd game from the mountains wasn't enough. I carefully removed the red fox pelt, then dressed the rabbit and pheasant meat and salted it. The herbs on the back hill were thriving, so I took a hoe and dug up some fine bupleurum. I made 2 big bellflower bundles and briefed Clara. I told her to watch the house, then carried the game and herbs to town. Town bustled compared to the village. Vendor calls mingled with bike bells. People wore all kinds of padded coats, their faces busy and intent. I headed straight to the supply and marketing station. It was the most legitimate buyer around, and the only legal place to sell wild goods. The buyer behind the counter was a weasel-faced man. He looked me up and down, taking in my patched clothes. His eyes filled with disgust. He picked up rabbit meat and turned it over, as if it were something filthy. He sneered that it didn't look fresh. The red fox pelt was decent, just a little small. How about $10 for the red fox pelt? Rabbit, 50 cents a pound. Herbs? No takers. Take it or leave it. I scoffed inwardly. That's not even half the market price. He figured a country boy wouldn't know the going rate. A red fox pelt fetched at least $20 on the black market. Rabbit fetched $1 a pound. He wanted to lowball me and pocket the difference. Without a word, I hoisted my goods and left. The black market was risky. I could get arrested, but the prices were fair. Better than getting fleeced. Hey, young man, wait. Someone called behind me. The voice boomed. I turned around. A middle-aged man in a mouse suit hurried after me. He wore a supply and marketing station badge. He must be the shopkeeper. He had a warm smile, unlike that sour purchasing clerk. He walked over to me, looked over the load on my back, and his eyes lit up. I'm the shopkeeper here, Oliver Vance. I'll take everything you've got. Red fox pelt, $20. Rabbit meat, $1.20. Herbs are priced by quality. Euplurum, 50 cents a pound. Balloon flower root, 60 cents a pound. That's $28.50 total. That's a fair price, isn't it? It was more than I'd expected. I nodded. Deal. I breathed a sigh of relief. As Oliver counted the money, he kept praising my herbs. He gave me a thumbs up. Young man, you harvested these herbs right. The roots are intact, with no dirt or grit. You clearly know your stuff. Bring any good stock straight to me. I'll pay top dollar. I won't shortchange you. With $28.50 in my pocket, I felt much more secure. That was a fortune, enough to support an average family for a month. Our winter coats were still too thin, so I headed straight to the tailor shop for cloth and cotton batting. I wanted to make Clara a new padded coat. The proprietress, Rachel, was doing the books. She wore a floral padded jacket and had delicate features. A sharp intelligence showed in her eyes. When she saw me, she looked up and smiled. She smiled warmly. Young man, fabric or custom clothes? I told her what I needed. I bought 2 bolts of coarse cloth and 3.3 pounds of cotton batting. As I paid, Rachel suddenly lowered her voice. Leaning close, she said, "Young man, let me warn you. Those 2 city girls staying with you, I'm afraid someone's after them." Yesterday, Frank was whispering to township officials in town. He said he'd forced them off to a remote logging camp. It's brutal out there. Once they go, they'll never come back. My heart sank. That old bastard Frank was up to no good. He was trying to get back at me by targeting those 2 women. I thanked Rachel and hurried home with the cloth and cotton. I couldn't help walking faster. When I got home, Clara was cleaning with Sophia and Lily. The 2 city volunteers wore clean double-breasted suits. They looked a little uneasy. I divided the fabric between them. They both looked grateful, but also nervous. I put on a stern face and laid down the rules. I don't feed freeloaders. In 3 days, you'll work the fields with Clara to earn work credits for food. If you're willing to work, stay. If not, leave now. I won't stop you. Sophia bit her lip and nodded, her eyes full of resolve. Terrified, Lily quickly agreed, afraid I'd send her away. I knew I sounded cold, but when you're this poor, a soft heart will get you killed. If you want to survive, you have to work for it. $28.50 seemed like a lot, but it wasn't nearly enough to pay what we owed. Frank said the debt and late fees came to $50. If we didn't pay it all in 3 days, he'd smash our cooking pot. I knew full well, ordinary mountain goods wouldn't be enough. After thinking it over, I had to venture deeper into the mountains. That was where the real treasures were. Like ginseng. Mature wild ginseng could sell for over $100, enough to clear the debt with plenty left over. Before leaving, I polished my hunting rifle until it gleamed. I also brought 2 machetes, one tucked into my belt and one gripped in my hand. Clara looked at me, her eyes red. She made me take 2 sweet potato cakes. Then she pulled my old padded coat tight around me. "Ethan, be careful. Come home soon." With the cakes and my coat, I headed into the mountains through the morning mist. The deeper I went, the denser the woods grew. The snow reached my knees. Thick fallen leaves covered the ground, making every step a struggle. Using the tracking skills from my past life as a special forces soldier, I stuck to places few people ever went. That was where the big game hid. After walking most of the day, I was starving. I sat on a rock and ate a sweet potato cake. Just then, I caught a faint medicinal scent. It was unmistakable, fresh, and rich. It wasn't any ordinary herb. It was ginseng. A surge of joy swept through me. I sprang to my feet and followed the scent. After walking for about an hour, on a sheer cliff, I spotted a palm-high ginseng plant. Its leaves were a vivid green. They stood out sharply against the snow. Its base showed a faint hint of red. A bright red berry crowned its tip. It had to be over a decade old. That treasure could sell for a fortune. My heart leaped. I started climbing up to dig it out when I suddenly heard a low wolf howl. The howl was a harsh rasp, heavy with the scent of blood. I spun around. A wolf crouched in a nearby snowbank. Its hind leg was bleeding. Blood stained a wide patch of snow, but its glare was murderous. Its eyes were locked on the ginseng on the cliff. So this beast was guarding it. Nothing's fiercer than a wounded wolf. It thought the ginseng would heal it and wouldn't let anyone get close. I gripped my machete, every muscle tensed, braced for a deadly fight. In my past life in the army, I'd faced wolves before. I knew what they could do. A wounded wolf was even worse. Once it went berserk, it'd take on even a tiger. The wolf spotted me, let out a low growl, then lunged straight at me. A foul, bloody gust hit my face. The stench made me frown. I sidestepped it and slashed its foreleg with my machete. The blade sliced through its hide with a wet squelch. Blood sprayed out. The wolf flinched in pain. It howled, spun, and lunged again. Its sharp claws raked my left arm, instantly tearing open a bloody gash. I grimaced in agony. The smell of blood drove it even wilder. Its eyes turned blood red, ready to rip me apart and eat me alive. I recalled my past life army combat training. I stopped dodging. Instead, I charged right at the wolf. I held its head down with my left hand, gripped the machete in my right, and drove it into its neck with all my strength. The machete sank halfway into its neck. Blood came gushing out, splattering all over me. The wolf thrashed a few times, then slowly went limp and finally stopped moving. Once it was dead, I collapsed in the snow, gasping for breath. The wound on my left arm burned like fire. Blood ran down my arm, staining the snow red. I wrapped the wound with a strip of cloth, then covered it with a piece of wolf hide to stop the bleeding for now. After a short rest, I carefully climbed up the cliff, pulled out my knife, and slowly dug around the ginseng roots. Digging ginseng takes care. Better to give up 10 acres than lose a single root. If a root breaks, the price drops sharply. It took me over half an hour to get the wild ginseng out, roots and all. I wrapped it in moss and tucked it inside my coat. The moss would keep it fresh and stop the ginseng from wilting. Looking at the wolf's carcass, I got another idea. If I skinned the wolf cleanly, the pelt would fetch a tidy sum. I could take the meat home for some much-needed nutrition. I pulled out my machete and used the skills from my past life to carefully skin the wolf. After working for over half an hour, I had a perfect wolf pelt and 2 large slabs of meat. I slung the wolf pelt over my shoulder, with the ginseng tucked inside my coat. I hung the wolf meat from my waist and headed downhill into the sunset. When a cold wind hit, the wound on my left arm hurt even more. But I was thrilled. With this ginseng and wolf pelt, our debt was covered. We could stock up on grain for the winter and still have plenty left. With the wild ginseng tucked inside my coat, I headed straight to the county tailor shop. When Rachel saw the ginseng, her eyes lit up, like she'd found a priceless treasure. Her mother was bedridden and chronically anemic. She needed this to stay alive. "Ethan, this ginseng is well aged. It's pristine, roots intact, with plump seeds. It's at least 20 years old." Rachel carefully cradled the ginseng, her voice trembling with excitement. "I'll give you $200. From now on, I'll pay double market price for anything you bring me. Deal? $200. I was ecstatic. That was a fortune. Enough to support an average family for over 6 months. I agreed on the spot. I pocketed the money and struck a long-term deal with her. I'd sell her all the game and herbs I gathered. No more getting lowballed by the supply station. I headed home with the cash. I even stood a little taller. My steps felt lighter. Now I could pay off all our debts, buy plenty of things for the family, and give Clara and the others a better life. But as soon as I got home, I knew something was wrong. The corner woodpile was doused in kerosene. I caught a faint, acrid whiff of kerosene. A half-burned match lay nearby. My heart sank. Sam's leg had been crippled, so he had to be plotting revenge. He'd torch my house at night, then fake an accident. He'd destroy everything without it ever tracing back to him. I sneered. That idiot really thinks I'm still the fool he used to push around. He's got a death wish. I followed the footprints along the wall. Sure enough, in the grass behind the house, I found a trap set by Sam and 2 thugs. It was covered with snow and leaves, with the trigger hidden under dead grass. It looked foolproof. That bastard was ruthless. He didn't just plan to burn down my house. He wanted me caught in the trap, then framed and hauled before the township. I instantly knew what to do. I'd give him a taste of his own medicine. First, I adjusted the trap's trigger, making it as sensitive as possible. The slightest touch would set it off. Then I dug a deep pit right beneath it. I filled the pit with manure, and the stench was unbearable. Finally, I hung half a wild rabbit beside it as bait. Now I just had to wait for that fool. Once everything was set, I dusted off my hands and went inside. I moved the woodpile into the yard center. Then I set 2 buckets of water beside it. Clara and the others asked what was wrong. I smiled and said it was nothing, telling them not to worry. Early the next morning, I'd barely woken up when a blood-curdling scream came from outside. It was so high-pitched and shrill that it made my skin crawl. "Ah, it hurts. Help me." I peered through a crack in the door. Sam had fallen into the manure pit, covered head to toe in filth. The stench was overwhelming. One leg was clamped tight in the trap. It was mangled and bloody, and he howled in pain. He thrashed around in the manure pit. The 2 thugs with him were long gone. They must have known things had gone wrong, and feared getting dragged into it. The commotion drew all the villagers over. When they saw Sam in that sorry state, they burst out laughing, doubled over with laughter. Someone recognized Sam's own trap and pointed at him, saying he deserved it. Sam got exactly what he deserved. He loafs around all day doing nothing but rotten things. Exactly. He was obviously trying to hurt Ethan's family, but fell into his own trap. That's karma. Let's see if he ever bullies anyone again. Sam lay in the manure pit, As he listened to the villagers' gossip, his face turned bright red, but his trapped leg wouldn't budge. He could only endure the humiliation. He trembled with rage, but couldn't get a word out. I stood in the doorway, watching it all with a cold stare. This was the only way to deal with a lowlife like him. I'd ruin his reputation for good and make sure he never lived it down. Once I had some money, my first priority was our home. I bought 2 big sacks of grain in town. Then I hauled home a cartload of coal. I piled it all in the yard, like 2 little mountains. The yard was packed with grain and coal. Clara couldn't stop smiling at the sight. The worry in her eyes also faded. I looked at the cold earthen bed and decided to build a heated one. Northern winters were bitterly cold. At night, we'd curl up just to stay warm. Clara got chilblains every winter. It broke my heart to see. With a heated bed, we'd be warm at night and never freeze again. I got right to work. I went to see Master Mason and asked how to build one. He was eager to help. He showed me how to build the flues and lay the stone slabs. I cut some fireproof slabs in the hills, hauled them home, and worked for 2 days. The new heated bed was ready. At night, I fired it up with coal. The bed grew warm and cozy. Heat flowed through the flue, warming the whole room. Clara, Sophia, and Lily sat on the bed, gathered around a small table, eating piping hot sweet potato porridge. Their faces glowed with warmth. "This is wonderful. We won't be too cold to sleep anymore." Clara felt the warm bed and smiled from ear to ear. Recently, the 2 city girls had started pitching in. Sophia was sharp and offered to keep the books. She tracked every household expense, down to the last penny. Lily was good with her hands. She could cook, sew, and mend anything. She kept the house in perfect order. As our home came together, I finally felt more at ease. But I knew one thing. That old bastard Frank was still plotting something. I needed to save more money and buy some weapons, just in case. After thinking it over, I decided to try my luck in the hills again, and find more valuables. Late one night, the sky was dark and the wind was high. Perfect hunting weather. I took my machete and rifle into the hills to check the traps I'd set. But when I got there, I was furious. Several traps had been destroyed, and the prey inside was gone. Several rows of flower-shaped paw prints were left behind, tiny and delicate. That mink was one crafty scoundrel. It not only stole my catch, it also wrecked my trap. Mink fur was worth more than red fox. An intact mink pelt could fetch over $100. It was premium-grade fur. My competitive streak kicked in. Using my past life's special forces tracking skills, I followed its tracks. The tracks stretched across the snow. The deeper I went, the denser the woods grew. The cold was biting. I couldn't let my guard down. I gripped my hunting rifle and scanned for any movement, worried the mink might ambush me. I tracked it for about half an hour. The tracks ended beneath a cliff. I quietly crept closer. By the light of the moon, a mink with a sleek, glossy coat crouched beneath the cliff, gnawing on the rabbit it stole from my trap. Its fur was pure white, like a ball of snow, glowing beneath the moonlight. The tips of its ears twitched. It seemed to hear something. I held my breath and slowly raised my rifle, aiming at the scoundrel's head. Then I reconsidered. A mink pelt had to stay intact. A bullet would leave a hole in it and lower its value. I lowered my rifle and gripped my machete. I'd take it down with the blade. Moonlight washed the snow below in a ghostly white. The mink held the rabbit in its jaws and stared at me with glowing green eyes. Its gaze was wary and vicious, as if warning me to stay back. I slowly lowered my rifle. The scoundrel was too alert. If the gun went off, it might bolt. Besides, the pelt had to stay intact. A blade was the better choice. I tightened my grip on the machete and softened my steps. I inched toward it like a cat. I deliberately crushed some ice beside me, using the glare to dazzle the mink. The instant it squinted, I lunged forward. The mink dropped the rabbit and arched its back. It let out a low, guttural snarl, like an angry kitten. The next second, it lunged at me like lightning. Its sharp claws shot straight at my face. The scoundrel was unbelievably fast, like a flash of white light. I'd been ready. As I dodged to the side, I swung my machete hard at its hind leg. Thwack! The blade sliced through its fur, and blood began to seep out. The mink recoiled in pain. It landed, spun, and lunged again, still quick on its feet. Using the terrain, I backed away, luring it onto a narrow ledge. No matter how agile the beast was, it couldn't maneuver in a tight spot. It had to fight me head-on. When the moment was right, I kicked the mink in the gut. I put half my strength into that kick. It went tumbling through the air. Before it could land, I drove my machete into its neck. Warm blood splattered across my face, carrying a sweet, metallic smell. The mink struggled a few times. Its limbs convulsed twice. Then it went still. I exhaled in relief. I collapsed into the snow, gasping for breath. Those moves had looked easy, but they'd been incredibly dangerous. If I'd been one step slower, my face would have been torn open. After a short rest, I pulled out the knife I carried and carefully skinned the mink. I'd done this countless times in my past life, so my hands knew exactly what to do. First, I made a small cut at the neck, then I slowly peeled the hide downward, working gently, careful not to damage the fur. Soon, the whole pelt came off intact. The snow-white mink pelt was flawless. I couldn't have been happier. Once I finished with the carcass, I tossed the bloody organs over the cliff. Just then, I spotted a hidden hollow behind the cliff, coated in white crystals. They glittered like salt in the moonlight. The hollow was covered by vines. You'd never spot it without looking closely. My heart skipped. This looked familiar. I scraped off a small piece and heated it with my flint. The crystal melted without an odor, so I gave it a light lick. A salty, bitter taste hit my tongue. Salt, pure table salt. My eyes went wide. I examined the rock wall closely. These weren't ordinary crystals. This was an abandoned salt well. A crack ran through the rock wall. Brine had seeped through the crack and crystallized in the elements. In these times of scarcity, salt was worth more than grain. It was rationed, so money couldn't buy it. This was a gift from heaven. I fought to contain my excitement. I found several large rocks and sealed the salt well's entrance. Then, on a nearby rock, I carved a mark only I'd understand, a crooked character for my name, Lay. This treasure would change my life. I couldn't let anyone else know. I knew better than to flaunt my fortune. I hoisted the mink pelt and rabbits. I headed home with a spring in my step. As the night wind blew, I couldn't help but grin. With this salt well, I could easily pay off our debts. We'd never want for anything again. I could even build an empire with it. By the time I got home, dawn was already breaking. Clara saw the mink pelt I was carrying and jumped in surprise. She rushed over to brush off the snow. Her eyes were full of concern. "How'd you get covered in snow? You must be freezing. Come inside and warm up." Sophia and Lily hurried over too. They stared at the flawless mink pelt, their eyes wide with shock. They knew how valuable a mink pelt was. In town, only wealthy families could afford mink coats. "I got lucky up in the mountains," I said casually. I never mentioned the salt well. The stakes were too high. The fewer who knew, the better. Clara didn't ask any questions. She just eyed the scrapes on my arm, then went to warm up some porridge. Seeing everyone's concerned faces filled my heart with warmth. With the salt well, I knew I could give them a good life. They'd never go cold or hungry again. The day to settle our debt finally came. That morning, the sun was shining. I had Sophia and Lily helping me turn the herbs drying in the yard. They were half dry and gave off a faint herbal scent. Just then, Frank's grating voice rang out. He shrieked, making sure the whole village heard. "Ethan, are you home? Officer Lou is here. Get out here and greet him." I frowned, put down what I was doing, and opened the gate. Frank was trailing behind a man in a mouse suit. He wore a fawning grin and was bent over like a shrimp. The man was about 40, with beady eyes and a hooked nose. His face was full of arrogance. He was clearly bad news. He had to be Lee, the township official. Lee clasped his hands behind his back, his chin held high, and shot me a contemptuous glance, as if I were scum. His voice dripped with disdain. He sneered, "Ethan, you've got some nerve. You owe the collective money, yet you're relaxing at home? You have no respect for the township administration." Frank quickly chimed in, bowing and nodding. "Exactly, Officer Lou. This punk won't pay on purpose. We need to teach him a lesson and show him who he's dealing with." As he spoke, he kept eyeing Sophia and Lily in the yard. His lecherous stare was thick with greed. It made me sick. "Perfect timing, you two. I was just about to repay my debt." I gave a cold laugh, went back inside, and returned with a cloth bundle. I opened it. Inside was exactly $200, plus food coupons worth dozens of pounds. It was enough to clear the debt with plenty left over. I put the cash and food coupons in front of Lee. My voice wasn't loud, but every word was crystal clear, each one landing with a thud. "The debt comes to $35.70. Here's $200. Consider the rest my contribution to the collective." At that, Frank and Lee both froze. They clearly hadn't expected a penniless fool like me to come up with that much money. Frank's face flushed, then went pale, as if he'd been slapped. He looked utterly humiliated. Lee's beady eyes darted around. He clearly wasn't ready to give up. Then an idea struck him. He turned his sights on Sophia and Lily. He wanted another excuse to make trouble for me. "Ethan, housing sent down youths without approval is against the rules. These two young women must be sent to the remote logging camp for reform through labor. They're short-handed there anyway. It'll be good discipline for them." Frank immediately backed him up, adding fuel to the fire. Officer Liu is right. What are those two women doing in your house? A single man living with two women? It'll look bad if word gets out. Make them pack their things now and leave with Officer Liu. My expression darkened. I stepped forward, and a murderous aura rolled off me. It was the menace of a man who'd crawled out of a pile of bodies. Seeing that, Lee actually pulled a dagger from his belt. He aimed it viciously at me. He blustered, "What? You defy a township official? I'm warning you. That's against the law." "You?" I sneered. My gaze was cold as ice. Before he could react, I grabbed his knife-wielding wrist. I squeezed with all my strength. His bones creaked. Lee howled in pain. The dagger clattered to the floor. With my other hand, I picked up the thick porcelain bowl on the table. I squeezed lightly. Crack! The thick bowl shattered in my grip. The shards sliced open my palm. Blood streamed down my hand. I stared at Lee, my gaze cold as ice. I said slowly, "Officer Liu, would you rather taste these shards or get the hell out?" Lee saw my hands covered in blood. Then he remembered the agony in his wrist. His face went white with fear. He didn't dare stick around. He scrambled out of the yard. As he ran, he shouted, "Ethan, just you wait. I'll make you pay for this." Seeing things turn bad, Frank Miller ran after him as fast as he could. He didn't even dare look back. He was afraid I'd deal with him, too. I spat on the ground and wiped the blood on my clothes. Clara rushed over. She took my hand and cried, heartbroken. Then she wrapped my wound with a strip of cloth. "How could you be so reckless? Your hand's cut up. Doesn't it hurt?" Sophia and Lily were white with fear, too. They kept thanking me. I waved them off and watched the two men flee in panic. I knew this wasn't over. Frank and Lee wouldn't let this go. There'd be plenty more trouble ahead. I gripped the intact mink pelt. I headed straight for the county tailor shop. This pelt was in perfect condition. The white fur wasn't damaged at all. It was sure to fetch a good price. With this pelt, I might even get an introduction to Secretary Vance. As soon as I stepped inside, Rachel came over to greet me. She spotted the mink pelt on my shoulder. Her eyes lit up, like she'd found a priceless treasure. But before she could speak, she let out a sigh, her voice full of anxiety. "Ethan, that mink pelt came at the perfect time. Mrs. Vance has had labor complications for 2 days. The clinic doctors can't help. They say a wrap made from the whole pelt keeps her warm and steadies the baby. Secretary Vance is paying top dollar." That gave me an idea. This was my chance to win over a powerful man. Secretary Vance ran the whole township. If I got him on my side, then Frank and Lou wouldn't dare bother me again. "I'm not selling this pelt. I'll give it to him myself," I said decisively. I sounded firm. Rachel froze for a second, then caught on. She patted my shoulder and gave me a thumbs up. "You're sharp, kid. That's a smart trade. I'll take you to Secretary Vance's housekeeper. She's in town shopping right now." I followed Rachel into a quiet alley. I met Mrs. Zhang, the Vance's housekeeper. Mrs. Zhang was a kindly old woman. Seeing the mink pelt, her voice shook with excitement. Without a word, she rushed me to the township administration's courtyard. The Vance's courtyard was in chaos. A woman moaned in agony now and then. The sound made my chest tighten. The moment I walked in, I heard Dr. Watson from the clinic shouting. He sounded fed up. "The baby's turned wrong. It's a hard labor. She'll have to push through." My heart skipped a beat. I stopped dead. In my past life, I trained troops and studied combat first aid under a veteran army medic for years. I was especially good at correcting fetal positions. Backcountry hunters' wives often had difficult labor. I'd saved many with folk remedies. As a soldier, how could I just stand by and let someone die? With no other options left, I forgot all about the pelts. I'd forgotten why I came in the first place. Outside the delivery room, Secretary Vance was pacing frantically. I hurried over. "Secretary Vance, I can't guarantee it'll work, but I know an old family remedy. I can try repositioning the baby. If you trust me, let me in. If you don't, I'll leave the pelts here, turn around and go, and stay out of your way." Secretary Vance looked toward the room as cries rang out, then back at my steady gaze. He seemed to make the biggest decision of his life. He grabbed my wrist, his voice trembling. "I trust you. Come with me." Inside the delivery room, Dr. Watson heard I'd come to reposition Mrs. Vance's baby. He immediately rolled his eyes and gave me a scornful look. He scoffed, "You're just some country kid. What do you know? Stay out of this. If you delay Mrs. Vance's delivery, can you bear the consequences?" I ignored him. My gaze fell on Mrs. Vance, lying pale-faced on the bed. With my past life Special Forces combat first aid training, I knew at once something was wrong. Her face was deathly pale, her breathing rapid, and her forehead slick with cold sweat. I said gravely, "Mrs. Vance must have had a recent scare. That shock disrupted her circulation." At that, everyone in the room froze. Mrs. John slapped her thigh. It dawned on her. "That's right. 3 days ago, our big guard dog broke its chain and lunged at Mrs. Vance." She went pale from fright. I never knew it'd affect her this badly. Mrs. Vance gave a weak nod, her eyes full of shock. She looked at me with newfound trust. Dr. Watson went red, then white. Too proud to back down, he protested. Nonsense. How could a scare affect labor? That folk remedy is useless. You're just trying to scam them. I didn't bother arguing. I faced Secretary Vance, my tone firm and final. I have an old family remedy that'll deliver the baby safely. If you trust me, do exactly as I say. If you don't, I'll leave right now and stay out of your way. Secretary Vance looked at his wife, moaning in pain on the bed, then at me. He gritted his teeth and made his choice. He gripped my hand and pleaded, "My friend, I trust you. Tell me what to do. I'll do whatever you say. If you save my wife and child, I'll reward you generously." With Secretary Vance's approval, I got to work immediately. Time was critical. Every minute we lost put Mrs. Vance and her baby at risk. Get me some clean porcelain bowls, a half-pound of strong liquor, and a large bundle of mugwort. The moment I finished, Mrs. Zhang rushed off to get everything. She worked fast. Before long, everything was ready. The porcelain bowls were spotless, the liquor smelled potent, and the mugwort was vibrant green, with a fresh scent. I sent Secretary Vance and Mrs. Zhang outside, leaving only the patient and me inside. Too many people in the room would distract me and make her nervous. I crushed the mugwort into a soft pulp, soaked it in liquor, and rolled it into small balls. Then I had her lie on her side to expose her lower back. That's where the Mingmen acupoint is. Applying moxibustion there warms the kidneys, boosts energy and circulation, and works wonders on a breech baby. This may feel a little hot. Try to bear with it. After warning her, I lit a mugwort ball and treated her lower back through the bowl. The mugwort's warmth and liquor fumes sank in. It felt warm and soothing. Her tense body gradually relaxed, and her breathing steadied. After 15 minutes of moxibustion, I had her lie on her back and gently massaged her lower abdomen. I'd learned this technique from an old army medic, specifically for repositioning babies. The pressure and placement had to be exact. Too light, and it wouldn't work. Too hard, and it could hurt the baby. I pressed my fingers against her abdomen, feeling for the baby's position. Slowly, I turned the baby's head into place. Breathe with me. In, out. As I massaged her, I guided her breathing. Deep breaths relaxed the body and helped the baby turn. The room was silent. All I heard was her labored breathing and the crackle of burning mugwort. About an hour later, she suddenly let out a muffled groan. I could clearly feel the baby slowly turning beneath my hands. The baby had been lying sideways, but gradually turned head down. It was the ideal position for delivery. The baby had turned. Relief washed over me, and I quickly called out, "Mrs. Zhang, come help me, quick." Mrs. Zhang rushed in. She'd done this before and knew exactly what to do. She expertly repositioned the mother and coached her to push. A few minutes later, a baby's lusty cry pierced the courtyard silence. The baby's cries were strong, filling everyone with joy. "It's a big, healthy baby boy. Mother and son are safe." Mrs. Zhang cried out excitedly. Secretary Vance's eyes filled with tears. His knees nearly gave out. He was too overwhelmed to speak and just kept wiping away tears. I breathed a sigh of relief, wiped the sweat from my brow, and quietly slipped out. Dr. Watson came over to examine them. Seeing the mother and baby safe, his face filled with shame. He apologized to me profusely. "My friend, I was a fool to doubt you. Your method worked. I'm convinced." I waved him off and didn't hold it against him. A doctor's duty is to heal. As long as a life is saved, pride doesn't matter. Once Mrs. Vance had recovered, Secretary Vance invited me inside, holding a thick envelope. He pressed it into my hand. He said gratefully, "My friend, no words can repay you. Please, take this $1,000. It's a small token of my gratitude. If you ever need anything in town, come to me. I'm Arthur Vance. If it's within my power, I won't turn you down." My heart skipped at $1,000. That was a fortune. It could buy a brick house back then, with plenty left over. I was about to decline, but Secretary Vance spoke again. He said sincerely, "If you don't mind, bring any game or medicinal herbs straight to the township administration. I'll find buyers for you and get you the highest price." That was a great long-term opportunity, far better than the station or black market. I stopped refusing and accepted the envelope. Smiling, I said, "Thank you, Secretary Vance. I'll be counting on you." As I left the administration compound, the sun shone down on me, warm and soothing. Holding the thick envelope, I knew full well this wasn't just $1,000. It was my foothold in this new era. With Secretary Vance protecting me, Frank and Lee wouldn't dare mess with me so easily again. Clutching the $1,000 he'd given me, I considered how to make the salt well pay. I needed to refine the salt from the well into fine table salt. Only then would it fetch a good price. As I passed the supply station, I bought 2 pounds of brown sugar and a bag of fruit candy. I wanted Clara and the others to try them. They'd struggled alongside me for so long. It was time they tasted the good life. But as I reached the village entrance, the old shepherd came rushing toward me. He was gasping for breath, his face pale, his voice shook. Ethan, something terrible happened. Frank and Sam brought men and took Clara and those 2 young women captive. My heart sank. The bag of candy slipped from my hand and candies scattered everywhere. Rage shot through me until my whole body burned. What happened? I grabbed the old man's arm, my voice trembling as my dread grew stronger. They say you stole township timber. Lee brought men from the township. Frank claimed, your ties to Secretary Vance mean nothing. He and Lee even fabricated evidence, claiming you cut down the pines out back, the old man said, gasping. His eyes were full of panic. While you were gone, they kicked in the gate and tied them up. They're taking them to the township now to send them to a labor camp. That timber theft charge is bullshit. I only go into the mountains to hunt or gather herbs. I've never touched township property. Frank and Sam still hold a grudge, so they brought in outsiders for revenge. They don't dare come after me, so they're targeting my family. Those shameless cowards. A murderous rage surged through me. My eyes burned red, like I could kill someone. I thanked the old shepherd and sprinted toward the township. The snowy road was slick. I nearly fell several times, but I didn't care. Only one thought filled my mind. If Clara or the others came to any harm, I'd tear Frank and Sam limb from limb. Villagers crowded around the township gate, whispering among themselves. I shoved through the crowd and rushed in. Right away, I saw Linshu, Sophia, and Lily tied to posts in the courtyard. The ropes were so tight, they dug deep into their flesh. Linshu's hair was a mess, and there was a handprint on her face. Her cheek was badly swollen. Sophia bit her lip and glared at them, her eyes full of defiance. Lily was sobbing in terror. Tears covered her face, and she was shaking uncontrollably. Sam stood in front of them, leaning on a crutch, with a cocky grin on his face. He gloated, "Where's Ethan? Why isn't that fool here yet? If he doesn't show, all 3 of you are going to a labor camp. You'll never get out. You'll rot there forever." Frank and an unfamiliar middle-aged man stood nearby, smirking maliciously. That man had to be Lee from the township administration. He and Lou were in this together, both Frank's lackeys. I looked at my sister-in-law's swollen face, then at the terror in Sophia and Lily's eyes. My blood began to boil. I clenched my fists until my knuckles turned white, my teeth grinding with rage. I walked into the courtyard, the snow crunching beneath every step. It wasn't loud, but every step struck fear into their hearts. Sam heard me coming and turned to see me. He froze for a second, then laughed even more wildly, like a hunter spotting his prey. "The fool's here. Perfect. Now we don't have to fetch you. You're just in time to watch your woman get sent to a labor camp." I said nothing. I just stared him down, my gaze as cold as an ice-coated blade, sharp enough to carve a man apart. The commotion died instantly. You could hear a pin drop. Everyone stared at me, frozen by the menace I radiated. They barely dared to breathe. When Lee saw me, he immediately stepped forward, stuck out his chin, all business, and glared at me. "Ethan, you stole lumber from the communal forest. We have witnesses and evidence. You want them released? Fine, pay $500, not a cent less." $500? That's outrageous. I scoffed inwardly, but deliberately put on a panicked look and wrung my hands helplessly. $500 is too much. I really don't have that much. I only have $100. Take it for now. I'll scrape together the rest. Please, just let my sister-in-law and the others go. I pulled $100 from my pocket and slowly held it out. I made myself look utterly terrified. When Sam saw that, he thought I'd really backed down. He charged at me, limping on his crutch, and tried to shove me off balance. He kept cursing. "You think $100 will save them? Who do you think you're insulting? Listen up, not 1 cent less today." Before his hand could touch me, I moved. All the rage I'd held in went into my fist. I sidestepped his hand and clenched my fist, aiming at his nose. Then I slammed it into him. Crack! The sharp snap of bone, along with Sam's squeal like a stuck pig, rang through the entire courtyard. He flew backward like a rag doll and crashed into the snow. Blood instantly sprayed all over his face. "How dare you hit him?" Lee saw what happened and glared at me. He pulled a rusty machete and swung it at me. The cold blade came straight at my face. I ducked, and it grazed past my scalp. Clang! It struck a nearby post, sending wood chips flying. Before he could pull it free, I sprang up and slammed my shoulder into his ribs. Crack! Another bone snapped. Lee curled up on the ground, clutching his ribs and howling. His face went deathly pale, and the machete fell from his hand. Those 2 screams stunned the security team members. They raised their clubs but froze. Frank's legs were trembling with fear. He stumbled back several steps and nearly fell into the snow. "Get him! Take him down! I'll take responsibility." Lou appeared out of nowhere and hid behind the security team. He shouted at the top of his lungs. The security team snapped out of it, exchanged a glance, then split up and closed in. One swept a club at my legs, while another aimed for my head. Their teamwork wasn't bad. I gave a cold laugh and grabbed a shoulder pole by the wall. It was solid wood, heavy, and well-balanced. My old combat training came rushing back. I swung the pole left and right, each strike clean and precise. I targeted their wrists and knees. Those were their weakest points. Injure a wrist, and they couldn't grip. Clubs collided with dull thuds. The security team's screams rang out. Within moments, every one of them was on the ground. They clutched their limbs, unable to rise. Their clubs scattered everywhere. The old wound in my arm burned with pain. Sweat beaded on my forehead. That fight was tougher than expected. The entire courtyard fell silent. Even the falling snow could be heard. I tossed aside the pole and dusted off my hands. I swept the crowd with an icy stare. Finally, I fixed my eyes on Lou in the corner and walked toward him, step by step. Lou stared at me, his face white as a sheet. His whole body shook, and his teeth chattered. He couldn't even form a full sentence. Don't come any closer. I'm a township official." Lee collapsed to the ground, hands shaking. He emptied his pockets and thrust all the money at me. His voice cracked as he cried, "Ethan. Boss Brooks, take it all. It's all yours. Just let me go. I'll never do it again." I stared at his deathly pale face, my gaze cold as ice. I was about to make my move when a horn sounded outside the yard. A jeep screeched to a stop at the gate. The door opened. Mrs. Vance sat wrapped in a thick cloak as her housekeeper wheeled her in. She was still pale, but her gaze was sharp. She'd given birth just days ago. Her face was still a little pale, but her gaze remained piercing. Her clean clothes gave her a dignified air. When Lee and Lou saw her, they acted like she'd come to save them. They scrambled over, wailing, "Mrs. Vance, thank goodness you're here. Ethan's a violent thug. He beat us up and extorted money from us." Frank rushed over too, pointing at me and shouting. Even his voice was trembling. "That's right. He's a bully. He stole the communal lumber and defied township officials. You have to get justice for us." I watched coldly as they twisted the truth. I didn't say a word. I just stood there calmly, waiting for their shameful act to end. The housekeeper stepped forward. Her clear voice cut through their shouting. "What nonsense are you spouting? Ethan saved Mrs. Vance's life. She had a difficult labor days ago, and even the clinic doctors were helpless. His family remedy was the only thing that saved Mrs. Vance and her baby boy. That money was a gift from her family. How is that extortion?" At those words, the whole yard fell silent. Lou and the others went pale. They opened their mouths, but stammered, unable to speak. Panic filled their eyes. The watching villagers erupted. They stared at me in shock, their chatter filling the air. Ethan saved Mrs. Vance's life. No wonder he had so much money. It was a reward. Frank and his men framed an innocent man. I pulled a crumpled paper from my coat and handed it to Mrs. Vance. I said gravely, "Mrs. Vance, please look at this. They kidnapped my family, forced me to write a confession, and extorted $500 from me. It even has my handprint on it." Mrs. Vance took the paper. Her face darkened as she read, her chest heaving with anger. She slammed the paper to the ground and thundered, "This is outrageous. In broad daylight, you framed an innocent man and kidnapped civilians. Do you have no respect for the law?" She turned to the guard behind her, her voice firm, and carrying unquestionable authority. "Take Frank, Sam, Lou, and Lee straight to the police station. Find out if they have any accomplices. Investigate every last detail." The guard stepped forward at once and quickly restrained the struggling men. Sam wailed for mercy, collapsing and refusing to move. Frank's face went ashen as he muttered under his breath. Lou and Lee couldn't even beg anymore. They went limp as rags. Mrs. Vance walked over to me. Her tone softened, and her eyes filled with gratitude. "Ethan, it's all thanks to you. If it weren't for you, my child and I would have been in danger. I won't let any of them off easy. I'll get justice for you and your family." I nodded. The weight on my heart finally lifted. Watching those scumbags get hauled away, I knew I'd won this battle. From that day on, no one would dare bully my family or me again. At first light, Secretary Vance came to our home. He wore a crisp mouse suit and a broad smile. He clasped my hand and thanked me. "Comrade Brooks, I can't thank you enough. If it weren't for you, my wife and child would have been in danger." He also brought 2 official exoneration certificates. He handed them to Sophia and Lily. He said gently, "Sophia, Lily, your cases have been cleared. These are your city relocation permits. Now you can finally go home and reunite with your families." Sophia and Lily took the papers. They stared at the clear print and bright red seals. Tears streamed down their faces. Years of pain and hardship finally melted away. Choking back tears, they thanked us over and over. I hauled back a cartload of supplies from the township, including sacks of white rice, heavy loads of coal, brand new fabric, and plenty of hoes, sickles, and other tools. I drove the ox cart with Clara, Sophia, and Lily triumphantly back to the village. The villagers were waiting at the entrance. When they saw all the goods I brought and heard Frank and his men were arrested, they all crowded around. Their faces were plastered with smiles as they showered me with praise. "Ethan's back. He's really something. Our village is counting on you now. We were fools not to see your greatness. Please don't hold it against us. Ethan, my brother, if you ever need any help, just say the word." I gave them a slight nod. I didn't stay to make small talk. That's human nature, chasing gain and avoiding harm, with the strong preying on the weak. When you're weak, everyone wants to kick you down. When you're strong, everyone wants to suck up to you. Back home, Clara sorted the supplies. Sophia and Lily dried herbs in the yard. As our home finally came together, I felt more at ease than ever. That night, after coaxing Clara to sleep, I quietly got up. From the cabinet, I took out salt from the salt well. Moonlight streamed through the window. The salt gave off a faint white glow, standing out in the darkness. I ran my fingers over the salt as plans raced through my mind. The winds of economic reform were blowing, and policies grew looser by the day. It was the perfect time to build something. I'd lease the forest behind the village, bring that salt well back to life, and start mining and refining salt. With what I knew from my past life, making refined salt would be easy. With my ties to Secretary Vance's family, I could sell it across the county and city. The business was bound to take off. Once the saltworks was running, I'd grow medicinal herbs in the mountains and raise chickens and ducks. I'd build an integrated farm. Then I could give Clara a good life and help the whole village prosper. I'd build something truly great. I turned to Clara, asleep on the bed. Her brow was relaxed, with a faint smile on her lips. She slept peacefully. Moonlight fell across her face, soft and warm. Outside, the snow kept falling. Its soft hush sounded like a gentle song, but a fire burned inside me, a fierce, blazing fire. The winds of the 70s swept this barren land, and I, Ethan Brooks, would unleash a storm across it and fight for a place of my own.